What is up, hooligans? This is Jay Hooligan,
Hooligan V.
and welcome to another edition of our live lunch. And today's topic: proof of concept and proof of content. I know these are, if you've worked in film, you've probably heard at least proof of concept. But what is it? That term gets thrown around a lot. But we're going to dive right into this so we can go into what each of those are, why they're important for us, especially as indie filmmakers, to understand what they are, how to utilize them, etc., etc. But before we even do that, go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you aren't yet. Give us a like and share this video if you like what we're talking about inside here. We're trying to make it so other indie filmmakers, this is all the stuff that we do anyway, is just spread information. Other indie filmmakers can get a leg up on closing that indie filmmaker gap with the Hollywood studios. But again, hit the subscribe button. You can also support us and become a hooligan yourself at the Patreon, patreon.com/HideHooliganFilms, or buy one of our RPG IRL shirts at thewanderingkiltsman.com/shop. Yeah, you didn't actually hit me this time in the chest.
I know, you could have done it to me this time because I'm actually wearing
No,
mine.
I'm not. You can't do that to a girl. That's this. No, violation. No. Alright, so, what is proof of concept?
Don't ask me because I get confused with proof of concept and proof of content sometimes. I think proof of concept is... Sometimes I get them confused because they sound so similar.
Mm-hmm.
But proof of concept is you actually film something to show.
Right. So, essentially, it's alright. Ever have an idea, and you know how people like, oh, this is gonna be a great film, right? And then they get really scared of showing people or telling people about this, what it is, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, I don't want to tell anybody. It's a typical indie, especially in the indie world, where I don't want anyone to steal my idea and do a version of it, and then it's like I didn't mention in the last one, like you can't copyright an idea.
Right.
Right. So you actually have to have something down. All right. Well, enter the proof of concept. So when you actually film something to show this is the concept that I want, it's it actually is something tangible that people can look at and see, like, oh, this is what you meant. This is what's pretty cool to watch, etc., etc. And yeah, I'd like to see the rest of the film for that. That is essentially. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry. You get the look and feel of the movie, right?
Absolutely. So whatever your film is, whether it be documentary, whether it be experimental, whether it be whatever genre film that you want to do, people can actually see that and have a much better idea of your vision as the creator. Now, there are different visions that obviously you have, that different people have when they all work together, especially when it comes to filmmaking on the back end. Producers, a writer has their own. Let's just start with a writer because everything starts with the script. A writer is the one who has their own vision of a story, right? They have a vision of the story, and whether they're going to direct it or produce or whatever is beside the point. But they'll have their own vision for that. A producer who reads the script will have their own vision, right? And then they will hire out different people, different department heads, different crew members, different directors, different DPs to make that vision happen. Now, when it comes to production, now you have your directors that have that vision because they've already consulted with the DPs and all the department heads to make it happen. And now you get everybody's visions all kind of coming together until you get one giant concept or one giant film, especially like a feature or series that people enjoy. This is why film is one of the more complex mediums out there to execute, because it takes so many people, and there's so many people's visions that come up, and those visions can change even during the filmmaking process. So during production, a director may have a certain idea of exactly, or may have exactly or vague idea. Hopefully they have an exact idea of their vision. And some department heads or even people in their departments will be like, hey, what about this? And all of a sudden the department head will be like, oh, I didn't think about that. Send that up, right? And then it gets approved by the director because they get the final say on set they go, yes, let's do it. And then after, when you do your dailies and you're watching everything, typically your producers will have a final say of like, no, I don't like this shot. No, this needs to be redone. It doesn't look well. No, it's not going to cut well, so redo it. Right? This is a little bit of a tangent here, but yeah, one of the incidents that happened like that was, what was it? Get Out. So Jordan Peele's Get Out.
Oh, that's right.
The whole opening scene, if you've read the script for it, it actually is very, it's not very different, but there's this whole, he tried to start out with a contrast. It's supposed to be as the organic family inside talking about going to Disneyland and Disney World, and then there's the guy outside who's getting attacked. You know, it's supposed to be a that concept, or the idea of the contrast between the two lives. One guy outside getting mugged, and then this family that's inside. I think you can see out the window from what I remember in the script, but they don't actually see that it's happening.
Do they go in the house? I can't remember. Because I remember them being outside of the house, and you see the family in the dining room.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like you can see outside, but they don't see it as they eat dinner.
Oh,
they don't recognize
in the film.
Yeah, in the film,
the characters don't notice what's going on.
There's nothing in no. Okay, so that whole family was taken out in the movie. That whole first shot was that oneer that everyone was like, oh my gosh, this is great, this is such a wonderful oneer, and it was a great oneer. Right. And they changed it. It took out that whole other side because that has to do with, again, vision of from script to film, and we kind of made that speculation that it was probably the producers that did that, because didn't he write the script too?
I think so.
Yeah, so he wrote the script, so he already had that idea for it, and maybe he shot it. There's a possibility that he shot it.
I think he did a reshoot.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, yeah, it was he shot it. They had to reshoot the beginning, and all of a sudden it was this oneer that everybody loved. Okay, so anyways, things change. Things can change. You got to learn to roll with the punches, and when it comes down to, again, kind of like going back to vision, when you're a producer or a writer or everything, you're gonna have your own vision. Now, when it comes to producing, this is where proof of concept and proof of content come in, because a producer is essentially somebody who continues a project, make sure that a project continues from beginning to end, right? So they're going to continue to push to make sure that everybody the project's going to happen, which is why they get paid the big bucks, which they don't. Talent usually does that. Actors usually get more money.
Talent get like, what, 75%
of a budget?
Yeah. Of a budget, yeah.
Yep. So when it comes down to the producer's vision for it, okay, whether they have a director attached, whether they have a DP attached, whether they have actors attached, etc., totally beside the point. A proof of concept, okay, just going back to that, it's essentially, like I said, their vision of how they're going to see it. Or if they have a director on there, then it would be the director's vision. Like if a producer partnered with a director, the director would be like, hey, this is great. The producer's like, you know what? I like your vision better. Let's film something small, and let's use that to bring in investors and people to actually
show.
Yeah, to actually show people instead of just doing the typical pitch session.
I think it's great, though, for like first time producers or first time directors, take that and take it to investors, be like, hey, we can actually do this work, Yep. So.
Absolutely. So yeah, having a similar look. I mean, the same thing is it can be said for like sizzle reels, right? So sizzle reel, it's essentially like showing your best work. This is what I can do. This is what I'm capable of, etc., etc. But that's what you're showcasing to say, hey, hire me, or let's build this.
Showcasing your talent, and then the proof of concept is more of showcasing like what you can do for this film, what you can deliver.
Mm-hmm.
So the project.
So yeah, proof of concept. You're highlighting the concept of a film or an idea that you have, where again it's something tangible, because words get misunderstood all the time, right? The whole purpose of language is comprehension. So understanding what somebody is saying, and that gets all mixed up, especially when people have different definitions of words, or they want to mix up definitions of words, or they use misnomers, or all this other stuff with that. This is why learning language is really important. and then trying to understand people is another important aspect of it. But outside of that confusion, it's so much easier to just show people. That's why there's that whole saying of show don't tell, and we've talked extensively about that over many videos from our previous live lunches, from other videos. Like the whole idea of showing, not telling. It's so much different in say like the differences between reading a book and watching a movie, right? They're two very different mediums, and people always compare, oh, the book was better, oh no, the movie was better. Like, hey guys, they're two different types of mediums, right? They don't translate either way, because one, you're essentially playing director versus in reading a book. But in a movie, you have a director, you have a whole team of people coming together trying to make a vision, usually a director's vision, which again, or other people's visions, coming together to have a visual representation of it. So that's like book puts you in the director's chair, and the talented writers will describe it in a way like they're the screenwriter and you're the director or producer making that live and happen and connect to people in there. You're more omnipresent. All that stuff that you do when you love books, when you read books, if you're a bibliophile, like we are, it's essentially that's actually making something tangible in film. When you're making movies or series or whatever, you're translating your vision and making it happen, which is why it's so difficult, right? It's so much, and the payoff for it is, if again, I love that saying, if it were easy, everyone would do it. It's not easy. So trying to convey something that more people will enjoy is so much harder, and that's why I love filmmaking. It's complex, right? So there's so many more aspects to it. Anyways, that's I forget where I was going with that. But we're talking about proof of concept and highlighting that vision of how you're going to portray it. Okay, I know I had it up on another one. Put it this way. So I think there was, not too long ago, there was it an old Soviet Union version of Lord of the Rings was made and unearthed, and they found it. They put it all up on YouTube, and I didn't get a chance to watch it yet, but I watched I watched a trailer for it. And I was like, oh man, I can't say it was horrible, because it was like I can't say it was horrible.
Different.
It was just very different. Yeah, I mean, it looked like a B movie, and but that was made way before the newer Lord of the Rings movies, before the technology was even there. So it was like a lot of the fantasy films that you see there. But think about that from where was it going?
Yeah, I didn't know where you were going with that.
It was supposed to be like
concept.
Interpretation or vision, I think, is what it was. So we're that's the topic for today. So being able to portray that from, say, like when the technology wasn't there back in the 70s or 60s, I forget how long ago that was made, versus watching the more updated version where we do have VFX and all the great stuff that came out from Lord of the Rings trilogy. Proof of concept from back then versus proof of concept now, they're going to look very, very different. But it's the same content, right? So I think that's where I was kind of going with, like, you got two people's visions of it that are very different. And watching, say, like a trailer for that thing, and especially now, watching that thing, like, oh my gosh, this looks terrible, versus you watch a trailer for Lord of the Rings now, and it's like, oh, that's fantastic. It looks great. It looks like it's entertaining, etc., etc.
Right. Well, even like take Disney for instance. It's like you have like the old Beauty and the Beast, the cartoon version, the animated version, right? Mm-hmm. And then you have the live action. It's very different. Yeah, but it's very different, right? It's two different people who direct that vision of it. I didn't like it.
No,
I didn't like it. But anyways, it's the same thing as it goes from books to movies. People, you have your own vision of something. When you're reading something, you hear the voices in your head when you're reading. At least I do. Yep. And you see it visually on what you're focusing on. Mm-hmm. And when it turns out into a movie, not everybody doesn't have the same thought process as you do, right? So it's a little bit like it takes you back. Like, okay, that's not how I saw it.
Yep. and it becomes more external, right? It's not something that's personal to you, except for the filmmakers that are making it.
But the good thing is like, so the whole thing of proof of concept, it's like, you don't have to take the script to the investor. You just take this. You can take the script, but you can show them instead of having them read the script.
That depends. That depends on the investor and how much they want to be involved. It depends on the investor and how much they want to be involved.
Bringing the script.
Bringing in the script,
because you can bring the script. It depends.
That's
what I said.
That's what I'm saying. It depends on the investor if they want to be involved. Is what I was saying.
Always have it handy.
Yes, I'm reiterating and agreeing with you, like that. Yes, it depends if they want to read it, because some investors will be like, "Yep, love it, great, take my money and go." Other investors want to be involved. That's what I'm just reiterating and expanding on what you're saying.
Okay.
So yeah, that please is it's just about the investors and bringing that to an investor.
Yeah, I mean it's good to show them.
Yeah, so it's something that they can show them. So again, it's not just talking to them, like pitching.
Because sometimes people have a hard time envisioning, and if you could show it to them.
Show, don't tell. Absolutely. So show, don't tell. All right, so the idea of proof of concept. All right, taking your idea and filming something. Now, the older proof of concepts were... I'm trying to remember when they were doing that. People, and even in the indie world, it's still in there. They think a proof of concept is a trailer, a mock trailer. So they'll film a trailer. However, that's not the only scope of it's like a form. A trailer is a form of proof of concept. If you think about that, like when you watch a trailer on TV or wherever you see it at, that's essentially showing the audience, hey, this is what you're gonna watch, right? It's putting a lot of the best looks, the best moments in forwards. It's like, hey, this is what you're gonna get in the film. It's essentially the exact same thing. It's fulfilling the same exact purpose to drive audiences now, hopefully by the millions, to go see your film. Okay, so showing that proof of concept, all of a sudden it turns your vision of what you've already made and shot from the film to say, hey, this is worth seeing. And people make decisions off of that. Oh, I don't want to see that. Oh man, they're gonna mess it up. Or hey, that looks a little hokey, But that's completely different from trying to do that in before production happens with a proof of concept. So when we talk about proof of concept in terms of filmmaking from the producing side, this happens all before production actually goes through. So you're either in the development process or in the pre-production process. You're pitching to investors to gain funding. You're trying to fundraise. You're either this would be great to add for say your crowdfunding, right? Or to show any angel investors, enticing talent, enticing directors or crew or DPs, or say you got this whole big look that you want for wardrobe. Getting certain pieces. Maybe it's a period piece.
To entice a director. If you have a director already, would you have two different directors, one for proof of concept and one for the actual movie?
You can, yeah. Because it depends on what. Yeah, it depends on what it is. Because if it's like, say, hey, I'm. Well, put it this way. Say if you hire a director out who's maybe doesn't have the clout or the pull to do the film that you want, but they can generate the vision that you have as a producer. You film that, show that to a well-known director who does have the clout and the pull. Be like, hey, you've already paid that first director for their time. Now you're going to reel in the bigger director who has the name, say like Peter Jackson, right? If you're going to pull in Peter Jackson, it's like, this is the idea what we want, but we feel like we've seen your work, we know what you want to do, this seems like it's in your wheelhouse, let's make your vision of this. You can still use that. It's the same thing as using like a sizzle reel, but Eric, put it this way: proof of concept for if you ever watched the BTS for Scott Pilgrim versus the World, right? There are they call it like previs, right? When they film it beforehand, but the BTS for that is all the stunt guys and the guys that were doing they were doing all the action stuff for it. They filmed it. So they filmed their what do they call it? Their template of what they wanted to look like with all the with the effects and everything, the angles, etc., of how the action is going to look. And then they sent that off. They're like, "Hey, this is what we want. blessed off by the director, etc., etc. And then again, the director may or may not be a part of that. A lot of times, you're gonna have a second unit director who's directing the action. If the original director doesn't know, doesn't typically understand, or can execute. It doesn't necessarily that they don't understand, but they can't execute it as well as somebody else, another director who knows specifically about action and how to get the best angles for those action, right? So that's another way to put
That's
that.
true.
So again, yeah, just pulling that back to proof of concept. It is, again, you're just highlighting your concept. So there's very different versions of it. And there's still that idea in the indie world, like, oh, trailer, I'm just going to film a trailer. Now, I feel like a trailer should be done after a film is made, because there's so much more logistics for it, and you're trying, especially in the indie world, you're trying to run off of shoestring budgets, and may not have the time, can afford the actors and the crew and everything for that extra time to do a trailer, because you need multiple locations, you need multiple locations, possible multiple wardrobes, multiple makeup, hair and makeup, obviously multiple shots, but all these different things to make it look like a film is already made. Okay, it's much more difficult to execute in that way. So the more modern version, and I swear it started, at least the trend started with Deadpool. Okay, and I know we mentioned this, if you watch any of our live lunches before, we've mentioned this before. Deadpool had been trying to get off the ground
for a couple of years,
a few years. It was like 5 years, 6 years.
They went to Marvel so many times, and I think they got declined a lot.
Yep, Marvel was not interested in making an R-rated superhero, anti-hero from Deadpool. Okay, so the director, the first director, the director, first time director, right? He never directed before for a feature. You got Ryan Reynolds. They got
who wasn't in the prime at the time.
Yeah, so yeah, this
in
is
his prime time.
Yeah, he kept picking up roles. Like I said, it all culminated into, was it 1,000 Ways to Die in the West, and he was just like, because every time you just get these bit roles and just like do just like, hey, this is making up for Green Lantern, and for everything, and other films. But I think by that time he didn't even have any lines. He just was like, yes, I'm here. You're gonna kill me. Whatever, just do it.
You're gonna Sean Bean me?
Yeah, that's essentially what it was. Anyways, but it started with Deadpool, and I think that's when, at least when the trend. I can't say it started with Deadpool. I say the trend started with Deadpool. Just to be clear, because first time director, they had about five or six of them. ATL, including Ryan Reynolds, who'd been pushing for that, and they filmed it. They did all the VFX. They made it look exactly how they want the movie to look, and that ended up being the opening scene for the movie, right? Their initial hook, and they leaked it, quote unquote, leaked it to the public.
Whoops.
Whoops. Oh, sorry, we leaked it. They leaked it to the public, and then everybody watched it, and all of a sudden, it turned from proof of concept, which was that scene that they shot, to a proof of content. And we'll get into that a little bit later for sure. But it forced the studios to go, oh, alright, we'll make it. And that's how we got Deadpool. And Deadpool 2. And now coming up at Deadpool 3. Right? So, proof of concept can have the potential to really make your film matter. Right? And make it happen in the way that you want it to happen. Right? So, pulling in the investors, getting the green light from, say, the franchise owners or the IP owners, right? To go, hey, I don't want to do it, I don't want to do it, I don't want to do it. And years later, like, all right, we'll do it, because you actually showed them instead of told them, like, hey, this is what I want to do. No, I'm gonna show you this is what it is. Okay. All right. So a proof of concept. Just going back to what a proof of concept is, it's essentially a scene from your movie. Okay, that's the easiest way to execute a proof of concept, especially in the indie world.
Pick a juicy scene.
Pick a juicy scene, or something that is going to highlight the tone, the feel, the look, tone, feel, and concept of what is going on in your movie.
Whether it be like a hook.
No,
kind
it doesn't have to be a hook.
What I'm saying is, it has to be a hook. I'm saying, wouldn't it be like a hook where you want to get that feel, that look?
Yeah.
Damn.
I mean, you can, and so one of the things that we like to do for when we're thinking about proof of concepts and planning for proof of concepts, think of it like I think we mentioned in the last one, filming short films. Short films don't necessarily need an entire act one. They could be any particular duration or any particular scene from your feature film or series to just that's something interesting. How many times have you actually looked up in YouTube, hey, I want to watch this scene again? We just literally did that yesterday with the court jester with the pellet with the poison. The pellet with the poison in the with the chalice of the palace. No, I'm sorry.
Vessel
with the vessel with the pestle. The vessel with the pestle has the pellet with the poison. The chalice from the palace is the brew that is true. And we just literally just looked up that whole scene because that's what people do.
I haven't even seen the movie yet.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the
I'm
whole
gonna
movie
make you
yet.
watch
All
that.
I've seen
It's a
is
great
the
film.
scene, but that scene is really great.
It's an old Danny Kaye,
But
film.
it reminded me of
It's 1955.
what you were saying. Is like, this is off topic, but it was like you're like, oh, Men in Tights, Robin Hood and Men in Tights, and I'm like, oh yeah, that looks just like it.
It was because we watched a different scene. It was the fight scene where he's hypnotized by it, and every time he's when he was hypnotized, he's supposed to be the greatest with the blade, but he's actually not, because he's supposed to just be a performer. And then the way to put him in and out of it is that he snaps his fingers, and he goes. So he's fighting the bad guy, and I don't know. I hate to say it's spoilers, but it's an older movie.
It's
but it's
40s or 50s, right?
1955, because we looked it up yesterday. And he's fighting them because when he first starts fighting, he's just like, I can't, I don't know how to fight. He's just swinging the sword around, not doing anything. And then the lady hypnotized him, and he's like, you're the greatest with the blade. And all of a sudden, he's just like, yep, everything is just formal, whatever. He's the greatest with the blade. And he's like, haha. And he gets him up on the edge. He's like, your life isn't anymore that. And he snaps himself out of it. He's like, oh, crap, I don't know what to do. It's a great movie, The Court Jester.
He's just going like,
and then he keeps going back and forth. He's like, I thought you told me you're going to end my life like that. And then all of a sudden he's back again into it. And I just I think I spit.
All I kept thinking about, though, he does this like parry.
Oh, parry,
Check.
thrust. Yeah, but there's there's a scene, is what I said, like, oh, they did this in Men in Tights. It's an old classic gag where he's like, he's actually up on the table. Danny Kaye was up on the table.
Yep.
And he pours, I don't know, it's supposed to be wine or something, and he's drinking, and he's just like fencing, not even looking. And then I said they did that too from Men in Tights, but it's an old gag. That's one reason why I love Mel Brooks and Robin Hood Men in Tights. Totally off topic.
That was awesome. It's just remembering that was really funny.
Yeah, because we literally just pulled it up yesterday because I forget how it came up, but yeah.
I started just saying the thing.
Yeah, the pellet with the poison is.
And then I was like, I want to watch it.
Yeah, and it's a classic scene that we got there. Anyway,
we're going back to Deadpool, right? We're talking about Deadpool.
Well, not just Deadpool. We're going back to proof of concept. What it actually is, but
we were still on the subject of Deadpool, right?
Yeah, no, we've moved on from that. So proof of concept. Again, is a scene. So how many times have you actually gone to YouTube or Googled a scene to say, hey, I want to watch this scene. Hey, you haven't seen this fight. Hey, you haven't seen this moment. And you send that to your friends.
Or scenes that stick out to you, right?
Yeah, or scenes that stick out to you. That's essentially what you want. You want to make a scene that is going to highlight, that's what as to your point earlier, it's like a hook to go, oh, that looks great. This scene looks great. I want to go watch the rest of the movie. That's not a trailer. It's literally a scene. And that's what a proof of concept is in the more modern view of it now. And again, it started with Deadpool. That whole opening scene of him fighting was that. It was literally just one scene. They showed him breaking the fourth wall. They showed him jumping down and fighting. It went right into that. That's all one scene.
Well, take for example, like what we were just talking about, right? I haven't seen that movie, The Court Jester, but I saw the scene and I was like, oh, well, now I want to watch the whole movie.
Yeah, because I made her watch the scene. I pulled it up before.
It's kind of like that, right? Mm-hmm. You get somebody super excited about it. It's like, oh, I kind of want to see what they do with the rest of it, you know?
Exactly. So, in the indie world, all right, if you're making a proof of concept, you want to try to be as economical and as efficient as possible. So, pick a scene that's going to really highlight your story, the film that you want, the look that you want, etc., and that's what you take to investors. Okay? Now, you don't necessarily need to have it as a proof of content which is what this whole next section is kind of about, but it's still roughly about proof of concept, is a proof of concept can turn into a proof of content as per Deadpool. Alright? Why did they leak it? Okay? Because they could have taken that proof of concept to investors, like, look, it's gonna look great, and they could have been like, yeah, Marvel could have been like, still like, hey, yeah, it looks great, I think you guys did a fantastic job in this opening scene, however, we're still not interested in an R-rated superhero or anti-hero movie, so we're still not gonna do it, not greenlit. They own the IP for it, so sorry, you did all this work, but answer is still no. So why did they leak it? Everyone was like, everyone knew that it was gonna leak it, but nobody knew exactly who leaked it.
Watch Ryan Reynolds like,
I forget what that interview was. It's like, yeah, I don't know if you leaked it or I didn't leak it. Oh, this
an interview on it?
Yeah,
that's funny.
Yeah. And it was like, oh, somebody leaked it, but I don't know who it was. Did you do it? No. Did you do it? No. Nobody did it.
Money's on Ryan Reynolds. He's just like,
yep. But why did they leak it? So, because again, their investors or their IP owners, the people that own the IP, for it didn't want to do it. They had no interest in doing it.
Still said no.
So, they leaked it out to the public, and all of a sudden, all the fans went nuts. If you remember before, when that scene came out, everybody went crazy for it. There were, I should try to pull it up and try to see how many views that proof of concept has.
Disney didn't own Marvel then, did it? I don't think they did. It was right before they did, because they acquired it afterwards.
Sure.
No, it's after Deadpool 2. After Deadpool 2, right? They bought Marvel?
I don't know.
That's an interesting question. Because I know they always talk about doing it for the fans, that's why.
Yeah. And so I should do opening scene. I'm trying to see the car fight. This just pulling up on one. The very first one already has 4.2 million views. There's the opening, which has 1.9 million views. Not the credits. Even the credits have 1.5 million views. So it's kind of hard to see whether this one has 56,000. This one has 64,000. That's a different clip.
Deadpool leaked.
Again. Oh yeah, leaked footage. Let's look for a leaked
so get exactly
footage.
What it got. Well, exactly what they put out there, right?
Well, again, you don't know if that's the actual one that they did. Test footage. Here we go. It had 238,000 views, so nothing near the millions of views that it has, obviously, from that. But again, this think of it. That's a couple 100,000. How many views? Because this is from 6 years ago. Scene comparisons. Oh, from the cleanup and what they had from it. That's right, because it was a while ago that it came out.
It came out.
Yeah, so it had thousands of views.
5 years ago.
Yeah, so it had thousands of views. Yeah, the test footage from six years ago.
6 years ago.
Yep, and it's obviously not as clean as what it was, but it was pretty clean. It was pretty dang clean for it. Yeah, and we'll watch that later. It's like because I want to watch that. It was pretty clean. And it got Marvel to go, oh, all right, I guess we'll make it because there's an audience for it. So a proof of content shows it took an idea, the vision of the idea, which is a proof of concept, showed that there's an audience for it. Hey, there are thousands of people that want to see this. And then Marvel went, all right, we'll greenlight it, go ahead, do your thing. And it made it. So that's the whole idea of a proof of concept to a proof of content. You have proven to your investor or your IP owner that, hey, there is people out there that want to see it. All those things build leverage so you can pitch to investors to bring it in. Because Marvel could have said, yeah, you guys go do it. But if they didn't want anything for it, or if they didn't actually say, hey, we're going to greenlight you guys, but we're just releasing the rights to you. So you guys have to do all the fundraising. You guys have to do all that. Now, everything that they've talked up, because they've been trying to build it up for like 5 years for it to come out, was becoming reality. And it became a reality. And they made it. Then they made a second one. Now they're making a third one, like I said. So having that proof of concept, right, to begin with, is extremely, extremely powerful when it comes to negotiations.
Do it.
What is that? That's the whole Field of Dreams. Like, if you build it, they will come.
Yeah.
Right? So they built it. They shot it. They showed it. They showed everybody, not just the investors or the IP owners. They showed the world through leaked, quote unquote, leaked footage that it can be done.
Even
Now,
people who weren't fans were just like, oh, I want to see this, you know?
yep. Now, you don't necessarily have to leak footage, and you can you can release a scene from it, especially if you're doing, like, say, a festival route. It doesn't technically violate their rules, because if you have a short film that you're doing, a lot of them say you can't release that because you have to have a premiere at their festival. Always read the bylaws for whichever festival you're going into. Some of them have restrictions on premiere dates. And yeah, so that's a whole other route for it. But if, say, you're doing a short film, even in a short film, but it's like a 20-minute short film, but you release one scene that looks like it's going to be a great hook for something to bring people in, and it's not a trailer, it's just a scene, you can say, like, hey, one, it builds hype, right? It's like your marketing. Two, it's going to show people that this is what the rest of the film is going to look like, and it's going to build leverage to it to go, hey, look at this. People that I think on a lot of these screeners that you have, they'll have a separate link aside from that to go, hey, show us this, any marketing or extra videos that you might have that's already out, things that you use to build hype, and then you post that. And they'll be able to see it on top of the film that they're going to watch. So before they even watch that film, they might look at your trailer or your proof of concept or your scene or whatever.
So, it makes me curious. Like, if you do a proof of content, right? You have those views and stuff like that, where you get like audience. If you can get if you go to distributors with that, and then try to get what is it called?
Pre-sales.
Pre-sales, yeah. Thinking pre-sales, because you can go based off like how many people enjoyed seeing it, and this would be like a projection of like how well your film could do.
Yeah, and again, that's the just kind of going back to the whole idea of a proof of concept, showing it. By that time, if you're at that going to distribution companies or negotiating with buyers, they're gonna want to see a trailer anyway to see how well it was cut. Right.
Well, because some of them want in too.
Okay.
You can. That's not always the case.
If you're going to the film markets, the buyers there are typically not looking to co-produce something. They're not trying to. They're not looking to co-produce or to be part of the creation process. They're literally trying to buy completed films so they can sell them into different regions. That's completely different.
Right.
But
I was
it's
talking
still
about distributors though.
Okay, but if you're saying that they want in on it, you're in on it. In what terms are you talking about?
Like, sometimes they'll fund some of it.
Again, if they're funding it, that's not. That's completely different, because if you're going to the film markets, what we're talking about for distribution, unless they are a production company to fund it, they're not going to look to actually fund. Why are they going to fund a film that's already made? That doesn't make sense.
I'm not talking about like going to the film markets with it.
But
that's
you
can still
typically
look
where
for
your distribution companies.
Before.
But that's where your distribution companies are. If you're looking for investors, okay, so that's the other side of it. Say if a distribution company or a production company wants in on it, that's a hybrid production and distribution company. What's going to happen is you're going to them, say with I'd like to talk to your acquisitions department, not your buying department. Right, because they're two different. They think they're in the same department. They're two separate like divisions. If you think about it, the people that are at the film markets that you're trying to sell to is different than your acquisitions department. So again, they're two different things. They may or may not be in the same place. But if you're talking to a distribution company specifically, you're typically trying to get distribution for the film that you've already made. So that's different than...
Correct, but I've also heard of people going and getting that little extra funds that they needed to finish the film, to complete the film.
Okay, so if you're talking about that incident that happened for whatchamacallit, they didn't go in... that happened to a buddy of ours, where they filmed half their film, they're trying to get it. Yes, so if you're doing that, again, you're they went. I feel like they went to the wrong route because they went
But
to
it's
the
also
buyers.
researching who.
But again, they went to the buyers for it. They didn't go to the acquisitions for it, or the acquisitions department, because they literally said, if your film was made now, we would have bought it. They had to redirect them to a different department so then they can negotiate what they wanted, and because they wanted in on it, that's a different department or a different section of it. It is not the distribution company. Like I said, they tried to put the cart before the horse. They went to the buyers, and the buyer said, "Oh, you have this? No, we want funding." "Oh, okay, well, let me send you over to this guy." And that's where they told them, like, "Hey, this is what we need. We want script changes. We want all these other things changed, etc., etc." And then they lost a lot of the creative control because it was a TV. I think it was Sci-Fi what they were selling to.
Okay.
So again, that's very, very different. Like I said, the buyers and going to talk to a distribution company who's looking to distribute and trying to go to the investing side or the acquisitions department for it are two very
But
different
some
things.
distribution companies have those sides to them
Yes, they do.
where they do invest.
But that's what I'm saying is they try to
Very
show
rarely.
they try to do it to the buyer. They try to negotiate to the buyer versus the acquisitions lead who's going to go, "Hey, I want to pull this in to make or to finish." Those are two different people.
Yeah, two different sections, but
Okay, but okay, I understand what you're saying with that, but at the same time, it's still very different.
okay.
Okay, because it's again, you're putting the cart before the horse. It's like going to a theater, like, "Hey, go buy my film," and it's like, "Well, we only buy from distributors." "Well, okay, but look at how great this film is." "Okay, but I'd love to have it go through a distributor." You see what I'm saying? So you're going too far ahead with it, because it's not done. If you're talking to
I've heard it from somebody else too, not just that guy. I thought they went in and they got some investment, but it could have been that it just redirected them to somebody else.
They would have redirected them. And again,
I don't
they're
know.
just
Well,
trying to get think about
I
when
don't
we
know.
went down to AFM. What were we doing? We were not looking for distribution for films. We were looking to understand what their companies do, who they are, what they do, and then get contacts. Right? And every single time, well, here's the card to somebody who's for acquisitions. You're looking for funding, here's the person you go to. Not
Right.
them, they're the buyers.
Right. I'm not talking about going into a market and doing that.
It's a market or otherwise. If you're going to the buyer, I'm specifically talking about going to a distribution company with um, for people that are ready to buy. That's what I was talking about. So
Okay.
that's why I was like, okay, they're two different things that
Yeah.
that go between the two, and
Right, and that's not what I'm talking about.
I understand that, but this is what I'm talking about. That's what my subject was when you go to sell your film, they're going to look for a trailer to look at what it is, and again, when you led into that, it sounded like you were going, well, you're going to the buyer to go to them. It's like that's exactly what our buddy did, and that's where
No, it's not what I was trying to go.
Okay, well that's what I'm saying. It's like that segue into it sounded like it was connected for that, but I'm literally talking about the selling process right now. So not the trying to acquire funds or investments or anything, because that's a separate side to it. Does that
Okay.
make sense? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So, all right. Kind of going back, this whole circle back to this whole thing with that is again, having your proof of concept when you go to a seller or a buyer or a distribution company that wants to buy your film, they're going to look for your trailer. They want to look to see what is something that they can see, like, hey, I want to buy it, right? If you don't have that, if you don't have a trailer bought, you're literally just trying to pitch them on an idea, and it's not going to. It may or may not pan out. Some people can pitch it that way. Fantastic. Not everybody can. Okay, it's one of the. It's like the business versus the creative, right? Some people are great business people, Some people are great creatives, Some of them are both, But not every time you're gonna find people that can do both. A lot of times they'll focus on one or the other, right? So they could pitch well, but their execution is right? Proof of concept kind of takes out that guesswork. They don't have to guess like, hey, am I running a risk on it? It lowers the risk factor for the buyers or your investors who are going to risk their money to give to you to make a film that's going to bring them back money and sales that's going to sell, to bring them back and replenish their funds and then some, right? So that whole idea, going back to proof of concept, right? Building that out from the beginning, maybe even before you have a director or before you even have talent, okay? To showcase the look, the tone, the feel of the essentially the essence of what your film is going to be about is going to add leverage to build it, and that goes back to your point about using that to get funding for that, right? That's what I'm talking about for investors. You're using that proof of concept, not a trailer, because if it's already made,
generate projections of how the film will do.
Yes, so you can do that, and typically that's a lot of that's done in development. A lot of that research is like, hey, these are similar genre films in the same genre. This is how well they did. You pull numbers for that. So typically, if you're doing research for that, what is it, 5 years? You don't want to go beyond. You want to try to stay away from going beyond 5 years.
For what?
For projection, for
doing
comparables.
Comparables, yeah. You don't want to go past 5 years unless you're trying to bring something back.
Like a style or something like that.
Or an old, like a remake or something.
Yeah. So having that means like when you're pulling numbers from a particular genre, say we did one for slasher, right? We would look back to all the slashers within the past 5 years, not necessarily anything beyond, because markets change. Markets change, especially with this past year. The theaters changed, business changed, a lot of things changed in that time, and going back 5 years is a good way to show, hey, it's not like from 20 years ago, look, this did well. That's like saying, look, The Exorcist did well in, when it came out. I'm like, yeah, we're in a totally different time. You want to remake that to have the same look. It's not going to have the same audience because it's already been seen, it's been done, et cetera, et cetera. So, showing that proof of concept, being able to pull numbers and everything, nothing beyond 5 years. Again, sometimes you can't. Sometimes you have to go further beyond, which is fine. But your general rule of thumb is when you're making like a pitch deck or an investor kit, anything like that, you don't want to go beyond that because, again, people are trying to give you their money. You're trying to get them to give you your money. And so you're going to entice them to go, hey, I get it. You're the business people. You guys know business. Let me show you that I have a plan to mitigate that risk, so it's not just, not just some crapshoot that you got where it's like, oh, we're gonna see how it does.
Show them that you treat it like a business as well.
Yep, and you speak their language, so then they go, okay, well now I have a little more incentive. I'm not just handing it to a creative who has zero idea of business, who may run this to the ground and just spending my money and wasting it to make something they shot in the garage, right? So having that available, especially a proof of concept, will go, hey, they can execute. They don't have the means, the capital, right? We do, but they have the talent and the skill set to create that. Now they meld it together, and now you can get a film like Deadpool, or whatever film that you may be creating on that. So, again, like proof of concept is an extremely powerful tool that you can utilize for that, so that to build and bring in investors. A trailer is a form of proof of concept, but we don't call it a proof of concept. It is just a trailer or a teaser or a spot, whatever. There's so many different names for that, and that's afterwards. That's usually after a film is completed that those things are made, right? So for a lot of you indies out there that want to get into shooting a proof of concept, who's trying to get funding for it, if you don't have that silver tongue negotiation style, you may want to showcase your skills as a creator to go, hey, like, this is why I said it's a little bit different than a sizzle reel. Having a sizzle reel available is still great because you can still show investors, this is the type of work I do. It's like, okay, but can you execute this story, right? That's always the thing. It's like, that's great, you did great. That was when I went to edit the feature that I edited. It wasn't my feature. It was the feature that I edited. The producers were unsure once they found out, like, oh, I specialize in horror. That's what we did, or we focused on horror films. And they're like, how is this dude who edits a horror film going to edit a faith film? That doesn't make sense, not in their eyes, and I proved them wrong because, again, I didn't have anything to showcase, like in a sizzle reel, that I can edit for that genre. And again, it's totally beyond the scope of that because I could have had stuff that I've edited before. I've done, commercials. I've done spots and stuff like that. I've done comedies. They've done a lot of different things up until that point. But that guy didn't have any idea. Or that producer had no idea that I can just edit, and I know how to edit, right? Because of what my background was specifically for the horror genre, horror, thriller, dark genres. Okay, So again, having that proof of concept is extremely, extremely powerful. Again, takes out the guesswork. Now, if I was trying to get hired on, like, hey, if you're, because I was already hired on when I met that producer, right? So it was kind of like a putting the cart before the horse. I was recommended, and I got hired on, which was great. And all of a sudden, it was like, hey, I don't know, who's this guy? It was funny because it was like, are you trying to grill me? Like I don't know. He didn't know. Like
I forgot about that.
Yeah, I'm a former Marine. Like nothing you're gonna do is gonna scare me. Like I'm just gonna be straight up with you about this stuff. I'll tell you. And I told him flat out. I was like, look, I've never cut a feature. At that time I've never cut a feature at that time, and I've never done a faith film. But I understand editing, and we just talked, and then even after the first meeting, I think I ended up being like, we ended up kind of like just hanging out and just talking films and stuff like that anyway for like a few hours. And that was because I went on set. I literally met that producer on their first day of production because I was like, nope, I want to come in because everything was done remotely for the hiring process and everything, because again I was recommended through I think it was the first AD, and I got hired on from that, and it was a first time director and first time producer for that, so he was still learning the process but the other producer for that was like the guy that had the clout, who had the experience with it. And again, it changed it because again I didn't have anything ready to go like I'm going to edit, because we were doing our own films. It was more on the director side at that point. I don't know if we were writing a lot during that time. I don't think we were
writing, but I'm trying to remember what film we were doing, because we were doing another film too.
Yeah.
I don't remember which one it is. It was a while ago.
Yeah. So again, like I said, we were already in our own world doing this stuff. I wasn't trying to get hired on as a director, but because I had helped the first AD because she was I gave her a class on editing, and she decided, and great mindset that she had. She was like, even after that first class, because she's like, I just want to know. I have no idea about editing. Show me about this. I only know a little bit or not no idea about it. She's like, I only have very little idea. Teach me. It took like 6-hour class. I gave her a 6-hour class on that, and by the end of it, she's like, great. Now I know enough about this. I know what I'm looking for when I hire an editor, and I know for a fact that I don't want to edit. and that's how it happened.
Me too.
And then later on, well, you've edited stuff because of film school. And then later on, again, I got hired on for a feature film for that, based off that recommendation of me just showing her and teaching her all that stuff. Even though, again, it was something way out of my genres that I typically do, and I didn't have a sizzle reel for, so I didn't have a reel specifically for editing, right? Long story, but all of it to me is very, very relevant because again, you're wanting to highlight your skill set. If you have a vision for it, learn, especially if you're on the producer side, you got to learn to delegate, right? If you're trying to do everything by yourself, which a lot of indies do because there's a lot of ego trying to compensate because we don't have the capital, that's why you get weird indie divas. It's so weird. Look, I'm the writer, the director, the star, the editor, the everything in this thing, and it's like, why? Film is a collaborative medium to do it, and a lot of times if you're holding that many hats, you're switching up between all those different hats, the execution for it's going to be poor, right? The idea that you can make a film just on your own that's going to be some sort of blockbuster because your vision is a masterpiece, it's very egotistical.
Director.
Yeah. So again, just kind of going back to that whole idea is when you're filming a proof of concept, you want to bring in talent. As a producer, you don't get, a lot of times as a producer, you don't get on the floor of production. You hire out because producing side is more the business side, right? You still have that vision. It's still that creative side because you want to see how it's going to work, but you got to have that business side to understand numbers, to understand audiences, to understand marketing, to understand what's going to entice other people to want to see your film, and investors to give you money if you don't have an executive producer, that is, because that's what they do.
Your goals for the project, and you can bring in the talent for it to execute it well, right? And there are different levels or different steps in development to showcase, like, hey, like I may not be good, with this, but I Mr. Investor or Mrs. Investor, whoever has the money for that, I need your funds based off of this to pull in a bigger name talent, or whether it be an actor, whether it be a director, whether it be a DP,
or whatever. Or say in Kung Fury, they pulled in David Hasselhoff, and he did a few lines, voiceover. He wasn't actually in it, and then they ended up shooting a music video for Kung Fury, and they used their funding for it. He did crowdfunding for that, but he showed them a lot of this stuff based off his pitches and everything of what his vision was going to be, and it ended up being a great film. Right, and I think they're coming out with a feature, which is going to be the second one.
Really?
Kung Fury 2. Yeah. The plan was to do a feature
right.
off the first one, and it ended up being like a 20-minute short film instead. And so I think now they're actually trying to do a full feature for the sequel for it, and it's completely nuts. They jam packed that short film with a ton of different stuff, but the execution for it was great, right? And now they got notice from that because they did that and they did crowdfunding and showed their proof of concepts, and whether it be concept art. Concept art may be a form of proof of concept, but it is not the actual medium that you wanted. So again, if you're doing film, show them what the film is going to look like. Show them what they're getting into. If you get concept art, again, it's kind of the same idea as between a book and a film, right? Between art and a film, a still frame and a film. How many times you looked at a picture and went, "Oh man, I want to see that film just based off of that picture"? Those are your posters, your one sheets. Okay, so all these things kind of come together, but a proof of concept specifically for film is something done in the development and even pre-production phases where you're filming something to highlight whether it's the actual talent that you're using. Whether it be directors, whether it be actors, whether it be VP or whatever, it's going to highlight what your film is going to be about. Why investors need, why should investors give you money, to highlight your skill set for it. But yeah, that's what it is, to build leverage, so then you can build the film that you want to film, make it the best version of itself. So you can hire in the people that have the talent, that have the experience and the skill set to really highlight and make it the best film you could make, all based off of that one little thing, your proof of concept.
It's like building a prototype.
Yes, absolutely. And again, you may or may not want to do turn it into a proof of content, right? Again, proof of content is the proof that shows that you have an audience. Proof of concept is showing that your concept, your idea, is a good one, can be executed well. Proof of content is there is an audience based off of that proof of concept. There is an audience for it. So it is now transfers from being a proof of concept to a proof of content. Look, I have 100,000 views of this with a 90 to 100% rating, thumbs up, based off of this over the past 2 months. Investors will be like, oh, okay, well, that sounds like you got something going there. Let's talk. Right? And then you schmooze. Right? That whole idea for that. So, again, understanding what a proof of concept is and understanding what a proof of content is are two very important tools that you can have in your tool in your tool chest to pull out and utilize on the producing side. So, really, really important stuff. Right? Final thoughts, because I've been talking almost this whole time.
I just think it's a great thing to have. Like, it's something I always talk to you about, is just bringing that proof of concept to investors, and having that proof of content, people want to see this, really helps towards, gearing up for your project and being really showing that you can get this done and that you can bring in the audience for it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I was, because you used to ask me for mood reels.
Right. Oh, this is a little better than a mood reel.
It's better than a mood reel. Mood reel essentially is, again, showing the mood of it's kind of the same idea, but mood reels, the way that we kind of view them is a lot of times you're pulling from other films to edit them together. That's kind of like at least the older style of mood reels was, I'm going to create a mood reel and I'm pulling from different films to make it and splicing them together like this is the look we want. Same sort of idea, just that you're not executing those things because they've already been shot. Anything. You don't have to film anything, so that's an even cheaper version of it.
But you're only using it to show investors, not audience.
Correct. Yeah,
so you
yeah,
can't
you're
do
not
content with that.
Correct. Absolutely. So that's a whole other deal with that. Anyway, so that's proof of concept and proof of content. All right. If you guys found any value for this and liked the video, please give us a like, comment it down below. Let us know what you guys think about it. Subscribe to the channel. You could also again become a hooligan, support us here, and because we're pushing to try to keep this channel up and running. You can become a hooligan. Go to patreon.com/HideHooliganFilms.
I'll be a hooligan.
You are a hooligan. So your hooligan beat. Yes. Or you can go to the WanderingKiltsman.com/shop and buy any one of our RPG IRL shirts or Wandering Kiltsman shirts. That all still helps because we help run that business as well. And yeah, thanks guys. Have a great one. We will see. Well, what is Tuesday? We'll see you next week. I guess it is Tuesday. Bye.
Bye.